There's something about watching water that tends to calm me, right? But in that stillness, there's a lot of noise, right? So recently, I went on a trip to Durban with my dad, and I learned to fish for the first time in my life. Now, I mean, at my tender age, it's very fun learning new things, but more interesting than that is because I'd never done this, there was a lot of internal wrestling that I ended up doing, right? And within that, I learned or found new pieces of myself that I like because of fishing that I didn't necessarily like before I went fishing. So this episode is going to kind of be about that, and hence why it's called Still Waters, learning to fish and sit with myself. So, what do you do if you are chasing calm, but that calm is terrifying? The calm is misery, aggressive, hateful, angry, vengeful. Because that's what happens when we sit with ourselves. We are our own harshest critic most times. But it is something that I found in watching the water, watching the ebb and flow of the ocean, is that sometimes we confuse being still with doing nothing. And that's not always the same thing. So hopefully in this episode, that is in our new little setup, um, we can pull on some heartstrings, hopefully give you some advice. Maybe not advice. Advice is the wrong word. Support, help, an ear, maybe a voice. Maybe you agree with some of what I think. So yeah. So the first piece that we're going to talk about is kind of the trip itself. Okay. So it was just my dad and I that went down, which in and of itself is weird because we have not the bond that makes sense. We are open and we are honest and we do speak, but we rarely do things together, kind of just to bond. And this was very much a boys' trip. So it was very, very interesting to see that. But it was just the two of us. The air felt different. It did. It felt like we needed a rest. It felt like I needed it. It felt like he needed it. So there was a lot of going on, but there wasn't any pressure to talk. There wasn't any pressure to have to say something. If I wanted to listen to music or he wanted to listen to music, that's exactly what we done. If we wanted to sit on the beach for the whole day and just fish, that's what we done. There was a little, there was very little pressure to be anybody that we weren't in the mood to be. And I think that was something that I found very, very interesting at first, right? But in that shared space, with the sound of the ocean in the background, with the smell of sardines in the air, um, you kind of, I kind of found that there was a lot that I'm uncertain of in life. And it felt like I'm always chasing the next thing. I'm always pursuing something better. And this was kind of the first time in a long time that I've slowed down to the point where I didn't need to be anybody. I didn't need to know anything because when we got my uncle, who was pretty much my teacher for the trip, he he taught me things, and I realized I absorb them very quickly, even if I don't necessarily understand why I'm doing them. And in doing that, it was almost uncomfortable with how little I knew. I felt out of my depth. I felt overwhelmed. I felt frustrated internally because no matter what it is that I was doing, I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I didn't know if I cast properly, put the bait on correctly, but I was adamant that I was going to learn. And I think one of my favorite things about the trip was, out of the fact that I only caught two fish, potentially three, but we don't count the third because I never pulled it out of the water. But the fact that I could sit with myself almost forced me to be honest. And it was, I was listening to music, which, if you know me, music is pretty much my love language at this point because I can have full on conversations in song, but I think it's just because I struggle expressing what I'm feeling. So I try and use other people's words because of if it makes sense to me, I hope it would make sense to the next person. But within that discomfort that I kind of felt, it's it was humbling. And I don't know how many experiences you go through in your life where being out of your depth is the thing that makes you feel stronger. Um, I, I, when I speak about it, I see some people kind of get confused by the fact that I say I was comfortable with being out of my depth, but it was just because I stood there not knowing what was going to happen. Much like life, much like any day that we wake up and go about our business. But because I stood there and I didn't know what a fish nibbling on the line versus a fish being on the line felt like. And that seems like a really simple thing because obviously, if the fish is on the line, it's going to pull. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know how many fishermen are watching this thing. Please do not judge me. Um, but it was more a matter of I couldn't force nature to do what I wanted it to do for me to feel better. So let's break that apart. My ego could not get involved in order to get the result that I was after, even though I'd had a preconceived notion of what result I was after. But on the first day that we fished, we were at the beach for 9 hours, two fish. That is the only day fundamentally that week that I can say that I caught fish. Because the rest of the days was 6 to 7 hours in the sun or in miserable wind because there was terrible weather on one of the days, and I realized I want to fish when it's pleasant. So maybe a bigger piece that I learned about myself is that I don't feel the need to try and go against every grain. There are certain grains I will go against. Yes, I can handle a level of inconvenience. I can handle a level of pain. That is something I can survive. But there are certain other things that I am not comfortable with, and fishing helped me learn that, weirdly enough. But I realized that because I didn't know what to expect, there was a lot of that's how I treat myself. I haven't known what to expect from myself. I don't understand what I'm capable of. I don't understand how far I can go. I don't understand how much I can learn. But I am learning as of the last 2, 3 months that you need to meet yourself where you understand yourself, and the pieces that you don't understand are not necessarily you, or the pieces that you don't understand are not you. They are still a part of who it is that you are as a person, but because you struggle to explain them, sometimes you need assistance from somebody else, or rather, you don't need any assistance and you just need time to be okay with being who it is that you are. So, because of the fact that I couldn't get my answers from the ocean or the fish, because there wasn't any need for that, I got to sit in a lot of stillness, and yeah, it drowned me ever so slightly. Um, I'm in a very chaotic time in my life. There's a lot of major life decisions that were happening back to back around this. There's a lot of personal decisions that I'm making around this as well that I've been making, hence a couple of the changes that have happened. But within these changes that are happening, you also ask yourself, why did you take so long? Why have you wasted time? Why didn't you believe in yourself? Why is there doubt? And all of these little things kind of broke silence. But I don't know. In the silence and the noise in my head, there was some kind of reprieve because it also felt like I needed it. It felt like I needed to recognize, just from a from an observation standpoint, I needed to recognize that what I was hearing wasn't me. And I know that sounds weird because of the whole consciousness chat and all of that. But something that I saw on Instagram over the course of the last month or something was that the first thought that you have is what you've been conditioned to think. The second thought is your one. So if you are doing things out of habit, if you are doing things out of routine, in my head at least, you are stuck in someone else's cycle. And I know a lot of people don't think that, but even not having a routine is a routine. Being impulsive is a routine. Being methodical is routine. Being analytical is a routine. Being predictable is a routine. I know it sounds weird. Sometimes you need to surprise yourself because I feel like they say within time speeds up within routine, and with a break of routine it slows down and gives you time to recognize it. So if life is feeling mundane, if life is feeling monotonous, if you're feeling stuck, try and change something. Go to a different place. Spend time with a new friend. Make a new friend. Hell, that's scarier than it sounds, but I mean, that's also allowed. But within this chaotic silence that I ended up finding and sitting with myself, I realized that it was more about the presence that I could give myself, that I could offer myself. And it was weird because on days when it was myself, my dad, and my uncle, it was my favorite time was being on the water. And I'm saying I didn't even catch fish. So pretty much I was just smelling of fish. I was standing with a rod, my back was paining, the sun was blasting us, and that was where peace found me. And it was weird because I don't think I really worked through everything, but I think just giving myself room to be me, which it sounds so ridiculous when you say it, but it's almost like taking out the resistance that I was offering towards myself made me feel comfortable. However, so I do think the stillness was something that made me nervous. I think for a long time I felt a lot of pressure to not let anybody force themselves to be the quiet kid. So I've increased my volume and I learned how to speak and I learned how to have conversation and all of that. But you don't realize how dependent you become on that stimulation, because I also realize I'm very particular about what I call a good conversation, about what I call an uplifting or an invested conversation, even. So that I don't want surface stuff. I don't want the conversation you give to everybody. I want a conversation that you could only have if you were present in the moment that you are in. And for a lot of people, that's not normal. It's not within the framework of what it is that they used to, because they get tired. They get exhausted, might be a better word. They get exhausted constantly just digging and digging and digging and finding the root of something. But to me, any conversation is soft sand. If if I strike a nerve or I hit a chord with you and it resonates and I'm calling it soft sand, I'm gonna dig. I want more. I want the peace you've never given anybody. I want the peace that you don't know is there. And for a lot of people, they don't try, they don't want to access that piece of themselves because I think vulnerability is misery. Vulnerability is scary. Vulnerability opens you up for judgment. But huh, that's important, isn't it? Everybody was doing this. We listen and we don't judge. No, we listen, we judge, but we overcome. That's what I'm after in conversation. Else, why am I wasting time talking? And I know it sounds weird to call it a waste, but if I don't want to talk to you and you don't want to talk to me, but because we're at the same party, we are talking, eh, you could just skip this. Let's both walk around and pretend we're just gonna get drinks the whole time. You get what I mean? It's not as solid as it needs to be. But over the course of this fishing trip, and it was because it was every day, bar one, because it was every day, it forced me to recognize that this is going to be what happens. The silence is going to find me. My mind is going to be loud. I'm going to be confronted with things. And then I'm going to have to do something or nothing. And I think that small little lack of distraction, lack of escape, I think that was something that taught me I don't need to do anything. I can just be there with my thoughts. I can pay attention to them and be like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that that's how we felt about that. Oh, I didn't know that this was something that inspired why I've been interacting with the world this way, because that's what happened. And yes, it highlighted things that I was like, oh, you know what? This is a terrible piece of me that just keeps leaking out. I need to deal with this and understand where it's coming from. But there were other moments where I was like, no, I stand firmly on my belief. This is something that I will go to the grave with. And it seems so weird to me because in so many of the conversations that I'd had in the build up to going to Durban, I was reluctant to go because I was like, oh, but I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to force anybody to do anything that I don't want to do on holiday. And my dad was like, what do you want to do? Let's just do that. So I realized that there's also this weirdness of I don't feel like I have permission to take up space. And I think the irony of the whole podcast is that I don't know so much if this is about me connecting with you, you connecting with me, or if it's just about the fact that I'm trying to become the person that I wished I could interact with. The person that listened, the person that spoke, the person that I didn't have to interrupt, the person that I didn't have to say, this is another way you could look at it. It is just, I listened back to some of the episodes and I'm like, oh man, this is exactly what I needed to hear. And I know that sounds weird, but there's a lot of trust, fear, and all of that comes out of me during these podcasts. But that forces me to be vulnerable. So even when I watch it back, I'm slightly unfamiliar with the person that I'm looking at, which I need. I crave sometimes because that vulnerability is teaching me that, yeah, people are going to have their opinion and they're going to say this and they're going to say that, as they should, because it's warranted and it's valid. But it's as simple as pretty much the first moment that I realized when I was holding the rod and I threw my line in and I was like, okay, so maybe I don't need to prove anything. Maybe the thing I'm here to do is to acquire a new skill. And in acquiring that new skill, I'm trying to meet a new part of myself. And then the journey takes off because of the fact that I'd given myself space and I'd given myself calm within everything that was going on in my life. It became the only thing that mattered. I'd forgotten about how I was feeling. I'd forgotten about the stresses of home. I'd forgotten about the stresses of life and family and friends and all of that. For the first time in a really, really long time, I just focused on me. And that made me feel guilty. That made me feel selfish. Now, yeah, this is where it gets fun. If people are people and people are selfish, and I realize that I'm not used to asking for what it is that I want, who have I been in the world? What interactions have I been having? What goals have I been pursuing? Mine? Someone else's? Am I happy or am I just happy that you are happy around me? Am I safe or am I just glad that I can make you feel safe? Because it still is. I'm probably going to take years before I can shake it, but there's a lot of priority that had nothing to do with me. And the thing is, I don't think people know what they want. I don't think people know what they like. I don't think people know what they respond to, myself included. Because there are new things that we experience that can teach us a lot. We need to be willing, and I think we're not willing to experience new things with everyone. We want some sort of familiarity in our experience. In this case, I guess it was my dad in Durban. Considering I think the last time I was in Durban was over a decade ago. It it was such a it was such an eye-opening experience because of the fact that I'd seen family I hadn't seen in years. I was being caught up on so much life that was happening that I almost stayed excited for the entirety of the trip, that I don't ever think, or if I need to make it a brain thing, it's like my brain was flooded with dopamine the entire trip. So I didn't need anything else. I didn't need attention. I didn't need validation. I didn't need support. I didn't need understanding. Those things became second to everything else that was just be here and experience it. So when we get terrified of silence and we think nothing is happening, is that not then the moment that the transformation actually begins? And that's what it's about. So, yes, I'm a little bit jealous of those that can handle silence. And they say if you can be silent with yourself, you're in good company, which is great. I'm not trying to be in good company. I'm trying to be in great company. I'm trying to be in company that evolves me. I'm trying to be in company that helps me grow. And sometimes, yes, that's going to be based on a confrontation. But other times it's going to be on, okay, if that's your idea, run with it. Let's see where it goes. Let's see how far you can take this thing. And I think for a lot of people, that belief is not second nature. That belief is not something they're familiar with. So they almost choose to rather be combative because of the fact that they're intimidated by someone else. And the irony of the whole thing is, I think I think we get intimidated by weird things. I think we get intimidated by unique things, person specific things. But in the silence, one thing that I learned is that very often do people pay attention. They don't listen. They don't hear. Whichever one you want to use as the more extreme version. So that's my little fishing trip, right? But within learning this, there's a couple of, what do I say? There's a couple of things that I tried to understand about myself that also led me to, do I call it actionable things that I started doing. I started writing while I was in Durban again. And I think the easiest things, because I wrote down like the four that kind of work best for me. So the first one was, while I was writing, I had to name it. So whatever it is I was feeling, even if it was wrong, even if it changed, I needed to write down the name of the thing that I think I was feeling. And the only goal of this was to see if I could see it, if I could pay attention to it. Then the second thing, well, this one I skipped, but I've tried it afterwards, is that I think 7 hours or 8 hours of alone time, if you're not used to it, is a little bit of a reach. But sitting with yourself in stillness for like 3 to 5 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, just for the sake of being still, giving your brain time to speak to you, to reach out to you, and then raising it like a kid, excuse me, raising it like a kid, being its friend, becoming its friend. Because a lot of that, my brain is not my friend. My brain can create extreme scenarios that when other people tell me I'm right, it reaffirms negative stuff. When I catch someone in a lie, when I catch someone in deception, it doesn't make me wonder, oh, I'm crazy. It makes me realize I'm so in tune or so adept or so fearful of not being able to recognize a pattern that I'm looking for it everywhere. So when I catch someone's negative behavior, dangerous behavior, belittling behavior, whatever that is, I am on edge, unsafe, uncomfortable. And it becomes something that we need to unpack sometimes. So the small silent stillnesses is something that worked for me. This is, I realize I do it with some of the textures of my clothes, but like sensory grounding. So hold something in your hand, textured object, stone, fabric, whatever, and then just feel how your body feels against that thing. Like just pay attention to it extremely and see what that does to your body. And then the last thing, which is kind of why the writing was something that was important, go back and read. Go and read what you felt. Go and read what you wrote. Go and read what you went through. I think those are really, really, really important, simple things that you can do. So, completely up to you. Okay, I keep messing up on these music recommendations. So, I'm also going to get into that. This week, we have 5 simple ones. They're all over the place. Next week's episode is going to be a little bit, I don't know. I don't know how vulnerable I'm ready to be yet, but we're trying to build up to it. But this week's music recommendations are first, we are going to start with someone that I've been playing on repeat is Hills, and the song is called Swings. Right, the opening line of that song just played in my head the entirety of the trip. It was something that I listened to a lot. Second one, a little bit of a bop. What I Got to Do by Dylan Sinclair. This is a recommendation that I got from a buddy of mine. Always going to be a good song. What Does It Mean to You by Carpetman. The motivation that came after the trip was then I Can't Lose by Eric the Architect. And then the last one is Tricky by Ruby. Now, this is a little bit of foreshadowing for next week, but we'll see. We will see how that goes. Um, yeah, guys. So thank you so much for bearing with me. Having been gone for so long, I was gone for quite a while. There's more than one thing that's happening. As you can see, there's some new toys around. There's still a little bit of emptiness that I need to fill. So I am working on that. Hopefully, that will be something that you get to see and enjoy. But thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Ordinary Connection, where we keep it real, raw, and relevant. If this episode hit home, struck a chord, touched a nerve, whatever, please remember to like, share, and subscribe with someone who's learning to sit with themselves. Even if it's you, share it with yourself. It's good for the views. Engagement is important. But until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay connected.